Hey there, it's Leona. Welcome to Zen Mindfulness Shodo. Today, we are going to practice Shodo meditation while focusing on the Kanji character for living or alive. So, let's begin our beautiful journey together. When you write a character, imagine a square about the size of the character that you are going to write like this. First, I'm going to write it. Then I'm going to explain the points and tips for writing the character beautifully in detail. Now I will explain. The first stroke begins from a point slightly above and to the right of the center point of the top left square. After briefly pausing at the starting point, draw downward at an angle of about 45 to 60 degrees, curving like this, and then scoops towards the bottom left while gradually thinning the stroke. Regarding the ending point, make sure it doesn't go lower than this middle horizontal line. If it goes below the middle horizontal line, it might give the impression of being a bit too long. So, aim for a position around the middle horizontal line, or just slightly above it. Now, for the second stroke, start from a position slightly lower than the middle height of the first stroke. For the starting point, it's fine to either connect it to the first stroke like this, or leave a tiny space about the width of the pen tip. Writing it like this is also acceptable. Regarding the starting point of this second stroke, let's look at some examples. This one shows the second stroke starting from a position higher than the middle of the first stroke. This example shows it starting from about the middle height. This one shows it starting from a position lower than the middle. This last one might be a bit too low, though it may depend on personal preference. Personally, I think starting from about the middle, or slightly below the middle of the first stroke, like this, gives the overall character a good balance. If you start from a position higher than the middle of the first stroke like this, the center of gravity shifts to the bottom left like this, making it feel a bit heavy. Starting from the middle, or slightly below the middle position creates a better overall balance, I think. The second stroke curves slightly downward like this, then moves to the right and upward until the middle vertical line is in the middle of the stroke. Now for the third stroke. Bring your pen from the end point of the second stroke like this, and start from a position a bit higher than the middle of the top half of the middle vertical line, or a little bit higher than the starting point of the first stroke. I think it looks better to start the third stroke from a position a bit higher than the starting point of the first stroke. For example, if you start the third stroke from a position lower than the starting point of the first stroke, the character will look like this shape. So if you compare them, I think you'll see that personally, I find this one to look more beautiful overall. However, if you prefer this character written in this style, it's perfectly fine to write it that way. I think one approach is to write it in different ways like this, compare them, and choose the one you like best. By doing so, you can write characters that you yourself are convinced of and reasonably satisfied with. So when you're unsure, why not try writing the character in various forms, compare them, and then consider which one you prefer. For the third stroke, move along the middle vertical line, curving slightly to the right like this. It's just a small curve. Continue the stroke until the ending point is a little bit below the middle of the lower half of the middle vertical line. This applies to almost all vertical lines, by moving the pen straight down while curving slightly to the right. Like this, you can create vertical lines that appear straighter and more stable. Why don't you give it a try? Now for the fourth stroke. It will be a bit shorter than the second stroke. Similar to the second stroke, it curves slightly downward like this. Just a small curve, and then moves upward and to the right, parallel to the second stroke. When writing this stroke, you see this part of the third stroke that's below the second stroke, right? Start from a position that passes through about the middle of this part. Because it's slightly shorter than the second stroke, begin a bit to the right of the starting point of the second stroke. Curve slightly downward while moving upward and to the right, parallel to the second stroke. Continue moving to the right until the third stroke is about in the middle. That is, until the length on the left side of the third stroke is roughly equal to the length on its right side. Because we start the stroke slightly to the right of the starting point of the second stroke, the ending point will also finish a bit to the left of the ending point of the second stroke. Finally, the fifth stroke is written the same way as the kanji for 1. Start from a point a bit to the left of the ending point of the second stroke, and slightly lower than the ending point of the third stroke. As you can see, this line curves slightly upward like this, but only a little. It should appear to be parallel to the second stroke. Move upward and to the right at this angle. Midway, connect with the ending point of the third stroke. From there, instead of going up at the same angle, it curves upward while going down a little to the lower right. The ending point should finish at a position slightly higher than the starting point. If you can move to the right until the space, to the left of the starting point, and the space, to the right of the ending point, are about the same width, it will look well balanced and beautiful. Also, regarding the spaces between this horizontal line and the others, if you can write it so that the spaces between these 3 horizontal lines appear to be about the same size, the overall balance of the character will look good and beautiful. For example, if it's like this, this is an example where the upper space is narrower than the lower space. And this is the opposite example where the upper space is wider than the lower space. When the spaces differ like this, the entire character looks a bit unbalanced and not very beautiful. So, aim for a position where the intervals between these 3 horizontal lines appear to be about the same. This part can be bigger, as it curves upward while dropping down, so it's fine for this space to be larger. But for this space on the left side, and if possible this space too, if you can write it so that these areas appear about the same, it will look beautiful. So why don't you try practicing while keeping these points and tips in mind? The key points and tips for writing kanji beautifully, as explained in the video, are concisely summarized in this book. Additionally, easily understandable Zen mindsets and philosophical messages are shared in this book. For those who want to practice writing directly in this book, I've also prepared a workbook. The writing tips and techniques are the same as in the Zen Mindfulness Shodo book. Each character can be practiced over 3 pages. If you're interested, please see the description. I'm gonna practice 1 page of this workbook this time, but you're welcome to practice as much as you want. If you're practicing with a pen, I recommend that you place a few pieces of paper under the page that you're writing on, so that the ink doesn't bleed onto the page under it. Alright, let's get started.